Hi, everyone. So, this is episode 7, the final episode of Allison Mack after Nxivm. So, it starts out with her 6 months out of prison, saying she got 1,000 hours of community service and 3 years probation. And she was trying to get a job, and she was talking to an older man who turned out to, be the man she would marry, Frank Meehan. She said she was scared because uh, of what happened, and she realized that the Nxivm cult would follow her. What she did would follow her for the rest of her life. And of course, Allison started crying, tearing up about how difficult it is to ease her way back into the world because she didn't want to hurt anybody. So the whole idea of her claims is that she didn't know she was hurting anybody. She thought she was helping them. Now she has difficulties trusting herself to make sure she doesn't hurt anyone again. And so she cries a lot, gets teary eyed. And so she said, I keep everything small so that no one will get hurt, whatever that means. And she said she's working on rebuilding trust in herself for her next phase of life. Rebuilding trust. I like the CDC and the FDA with the public after COVID. Anyways, Natalie asks, can she ever trust herself again? Can Allison ever trust herself again? That's the quandary here at the beginning of the podcast. Then in February 2024, 8 months out of prison, that's when she met Frank Mienick or Mink. She said that she talks about the initial stages of the relationship. Her and her mother had a date night every Thursday, and they went to his restaurant where he was working as a waiter. And then she found out that he was in a documentary. And then he found out she was in a documentary. So they watched each other in documentaries before they met. Frank was a former neo-Nazi, which they said neo-Nazism is like a cult as well. And so that the two of them getting together help each other to deprogram, basically. Um, Frank found out he's Jewish. They didn't say how he found out. What I read was that he did a genealogy test with 23andMe and found out he's like 2%, Ashkenazi. So now he's very religious. Narrator goes to the very beginning. Then the narrator goes back to before she even started this podcast with Allison, talking about when Vanessa Grigoratis suggested that she interview Allison Mack in the first place. And Natalie says she responded to her saying, I have no interest in being a tool in Allison's Mack reduction arc. And she doesn't really explain what reduction arc is supposed to mean. To people outside of Hollywood, I assume it looks like she's referring to improving Allison's image. That's exactly what they're doing with this podcast. But anyways, Vanessa persuaded her to just meet Allison, and she did. And she said she saw a lot of herself in Allison. Because before meeting her, Natalie said she only knew what she knew about Allison from documentaries where she was portrayed as a villain. So they sit together to meet each other and they talk, and they happen to be taking the same type of therapy. And Allison Mack explains that she was always trying to be the best student, the best actress, and then the best cult member, which made her the worst. And Allison reiterates how she thought she was doing the right thing at the time, but it resulted in bad things. And then Allison tells a story about being in a museum and seeing a picture of a bunch of Manson followers who had shaved their heads. And Allison said, oh my gosh, that was me, I don't know if I believe that one, but anyways, why she put that story in there, I guess. I don't know. Natalie asked Allison if, oh, okay. So Natalie asked Allison, if Nxivm had continued, if you'd never been arrested, none of this happened, what do you think would have happened? Would it have ended up like the Manson family getting violent? And Allison does not directly address the question. Instead she quotes Lear about that way madness, lies. So basically saying yes, but not saying it directly and not being at all detailed about what or how or exactly. But I mean, I think Nexium had already gotten pretty bad, if you ask me, with the branding, but and they were being trained to be psychopaths with Dr. Porter and the fright experience experiments that he was doing, and they admitted they were training these women to be psychopaths in order to be an army for Keith. But none of this is mentioned in this documentary. And Allison Mack doesn't talk about it. They all claim that they were very siloed, so they didn't know what the others were doing. But that didn't come up. She didn't explain that. Allison just insinuates that, yeah, it looks like it would have gotten crazier, would have gotten worse. But she tries not to think about it because, it'd make her mad or insane. And then again, Allison Mack says, "How can I trust myself again?" So it's poor Allison. She can't trust herself. And then Allison says, "Female empowerment has been my jam since I was 12 years old." And she starts crying. Like, it was so important to her, and they hurt her so badly at Berkeley. I guess by kicking her out of the gender studies program. She doesn't say that, but I mean that's the message I'm getting from that. And Nxivm, Allison did hurt many women. And then Allison describes how she coerced women to seduce Keith, who ended up raping them. And Natalie uh, agreed to meet with Allison because she says that Allison was willing to grapple with the horrible things she did. Allison claims that she, quote, didn't hold anybody down, but claims that she only used emotional aggression and coercion. Well, Allison, in fact, did hold people down when they got branded. Uh, and, emotional aggression and coercion are pretty powerful forces, as everyone knows, since 2020, 2021. Anyways, Allison Mack admits to her harshness, her callousness. And of course, that's what the judge said about her. So she used that term. She admitted she was harsh, callous, forceful, aggressive, and abusive. So Allison admits to all this. She said it was 100% true also that she cared deeply about wanting her slaves. She didn't say the word slaves, but she says she cared deeply that she wanted to help the other girls improve. And then Natalie gave the quote, hurt people, hurt people. And then Allison Mack tried um, to move forward in her life after Nxivm by taking the gender studies at Berkeley, but that didn't work out because the other women weren't comfortable there. So she changed her major to psychology. So now Allison is pursuing a master's in social work. Allison Mack wants to be a PhD therapist, a highly educated PhD therapist. Allison says that this is so that she's not quote haphazard with anyone's mental health. She claims she's going to work really hard to be ethical and do the right thing and not harm anyone. But I find it interesting that now she wants to be a PhD psychologist, like the highest of highest educated in psychology, so she can influence people and help them, quote unquote, help them. So she's basically trying to do the same thing she was doing in DOS, but from an educational level, you know? So instead of doing it through a cult, she's doing it through, you could argue, the cult of academia. I mean, that's what, that's the impression I get from that she still wants to be in that authoritative position, but be more careful to have better results and not hurt anyone. I don't know. Anyway, psychiatry, it can be very hurtful to people. I mean, and it has a history of lobotomies, and the antidepressants are very controversial. So, I mean, there's a lot of harm that can be done, even if you're a PhD in various ways. Doesn't mean you're suddenly going to be knowing the exact right ethical thing to do or do the right thing. But having a PhD would certainly wield you a lot more power and credentials to be able to do more and perhaps get away with it. Anyways, Lauren Salzman, then they switched to Lauren Salzman, who feels that she was in an abusive situation in Nxivm, and that she didn't have a strong enough sense of self and felt that Keith took advantage of that. Lauren is married right now. She has a wife. Keith still has some supporters. Claire Bronfman has never renounced Keith Raniere or Nxivm. Nikki Klein did renounce Nxivm in 2023, but she did not respond to requests to be in this podcast. She's apparently trying to act again. India Oxenberg responded with a letter saying, she just had a baby. She's married. She's focused on that. She doesn't want to go into the compound abuse of the community just yet. Allison, Mack, and Lauren still want to help people. Allison is teaching arts therapy in prison. And then at the very end of the podcast, talks about Allison Mack going to the tattoo parlor to get a tattoo to cover her branding on her hip. Allison also has a nose ring and other tattoos. And according to Natalie, the tattoo of the lotus flower completely covers. You can't see the branding anymore. And that is the end of episode 7, the final episode of the Allison Mack podcast.